Inflation gauges flashed red last week, but does it matter? Hi, I'm Griffin of Derivative Logic, here to get you straight to smart. As evidenced by the Consumer Price Index, or CPI, one of the Fed's favorite inflation gauges, consumer prices rose 5.4% year over year in September, up from August's 5.3%, as global supply chains remain disrupted. The inflation gauge has now been above 5% year over year for 5 months in a row. It's been more than 3 decades since that happened and is the longest such gap in the history of the data. Food, shelter, and energy price rises all contributed to the uptick. Here's a fun fact. The recent spike in the cost of living resulted in the Social Security Administration announcing that monthly payouts to retirees will rise 5.9% in 2022. The largest such adjustment in 40 years. Our take? While inflation pressures are likely to ease once logistical logjams are unraveled, what worries markets is that the process is taking longer than expected, with no timely resolution in view. Despite the persistent rise in prices, though, and the financial media's incessant coverage of them, what the Fed is really watching is inflation expectations. That is, when and if households and firms consciously alter their behaviors in response to price dynamics. So far, it seems that inflation expectations haven't changed broadly, giving the Fed more freedom to respond than the financial news media implies. What caught our eye in the CPI data and in the Fed meeting minutes, which were also released last week, were signals that rapid growth in housing prices over the past year are flashing brighter than ever on the Fed's inflation radar screen. The minute showed that Fed members flagged shelter costs in their consumer price basket as the key indicator to watch, likely a sign that inflation is becoming less transitory and more persistent. Supporting the Fed's heightened inflation attention span was detail in the CPI data showing that rents, which lagged housing prices, drove the bulk of the acceleration in core inflation last month. With housing prices up 20% over the past year, the pressure on rents will likely continue in future CPI data releases. Hence, it's housing costs, not the price of gasoline or used cars, that may turn out to be the most decisive factor in the debate over whether inflation is transitory, as the Fed claims, or not. The coming week's data releases will provide clues on one of the biggest issues the Fed faces as it walks the high wire of monetary policy: how high housing prices will rise and how serious the Fed should take them. The billion-dollar question now: how much longer housing prices will climb? That answer depends on supply, a word that was mentioned 25 times in the Fed's September meeting minutes. Do you want to know when and how much the Fed will hike interest rates? Watch housing prices. From all of us at Derivative Logic, have a great week.